Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 28th February 2023. This is Sassy Mint Grace reading to you from my book, Hope's Kiss. And you'll notice a discrepancy in chapters, and don't worry about it. I've been trying to get the chapters lined up for days, and I'm not going to worry about it anymore. So we're going to call this for today, chapter 24. Carrie was also crying at the moment. She was sitting in the security office at the airport trying to wrap her head around the news she'd just received. The border crossing officials rejected her passport. She was not allowed to fly into the U.S. until proper forms were filled out and an appeal approved to exempt her from restrictions for compassionate reasons. She prayed that the prison authorities would at least allow her a phone call to let MJ know that she wouldn't be there later. She ordered an Earl Grey tea at the airport cafe and opened the newspaper that someone had left behind on the next table. Why did she bother? All they printed was despair and rumblings of corruption that were mere shadows of the real depth of decadence being carried out by the state. Here on the front page was another yet natural disaster that killed an estimated 10,000 people in just one city. People were walking about the street like zombies. Looting was happening. There was a global trend of people choosing to kill themselves rather than face the misery of loss of loved ones, trying to heal the heartbreak of and everything they had spent their entire life working for. And then there was MJ, one of the good ones, trying to heal the heartbreak of the world, trying to inspire folks to open their arms with love to their fellow beings. And where did it get her? She was being treated like a modern day witch, persecuted for being different. What could the Americans possibly have on her to make them think she was a terrorist? Did someone report her for revenge? Revenge for what? That would be the question. MJ's worst crime was her total honesty. At least that was how most saw her irreverence for the status quo. Carrie looked up the number of the detention center MJ was being held at and pushed in the numbers on her phone. The receptionist picked up and transferred the call down to the wing MJ was housed on. The official answered the phone and put her on hold while he inquired if the call would be allowed and then sent for MJ to be brought to the office. Carrie scratched her neck hard enough to make it bleed. She felt like fleas were biting when she was stressed. She yawned and burped and looked at the clock. She drummed her fingers on the table and cursed the slow process that she was paying long-distance daytime rates on a cell phone for. Finally, MJ's voice on the other end spoke a tentative, "Hello?" Carrie's throat went dry and a lump made it hard for her to speak. "MJ?" "Yes, honey, it's me. Oh my God, I miss you. When are you going to get here?" "That's just it, hon. They have me on the no-fly list because I have a known association with someone in the system suspected of terrorism." There was a silence, and then, "Ah, fuck. Fucking bastards." The guard gave MJ a warning look and shook his head. She took a deep breath and collected herself and then said into the receiver, "I love you as far as the east is from the west," and nodded in a circle. "I'll be home as soon as I can, darling. Take care of my sweetheart. Bye." As MJ knew, Carrie was struggling not to sob. She caught control of her voice as much as she was able to and responded, "I love you too. Forever and always, my darling, you'll be. Bye." The dial tone replaced a silence. Carrie dug a Kleenex from her purse and blew her nose and dabbed at her bloodshot eyes. She went out the doors and waved for a cab to take her home. MJ hung up the phone and returned with the guard to her cell. This detention center was not the standard prison. It was newer, and the staff was a little less overbearing than the place she'd been held at home. When she got back to her cell, she reached into her storage shelf for a journal and the pen that lay beside it. At the age of 10, she was given her first journal. She learned that when she was upset, the most helpful thing she could do was write out what she was feeling. MJ's journal entry, day 27, captivity. Still waiting for the authorities to show up and tell me how they made a terrible mistake, waiting for the wise peacemakers in the world to awaken humanity, waiting for humanity to rise up from the sleep of ignorance, to reach out to their fellow man and make a difference. MJ recalled the day she first watched the video, What is the Meaning of Life? She was living in a building of people who struggled with poverty, illness, and especially addiction. Her own life had already been transformed through her faith in a higher power. She had already made remarkable discoveries about the secrets of the universe. In her late 20s, MJ learned that the source of the elusive love she had been seeking her whole life was the Creator. She noticed that she did not actually feel love from those she looked to for it. She felt physical touch, reception of kind words and material gifts, but no experience of love inside. She tasted what she thought was love for years in the form of sexual relationships, always feeling empty and disappointed when her arms or bed were empty. And she realized that what she was really getting was only the distraction from that feeling of emptiness and longing. One day she woke up to realize that the real source of unconditional love was God. And not only that, but she recognized that the only time she actually felt, really experienced love was when she was giving it. Her heart was a channel that pumped from the source. From that time on, she would remind herself that other people could only give her touch and stuff, but the real treasures came through her own heart. This wisdom made good sense considering the 12-step program that had saved her life had set into the plan working with others to help oneself. Now, in this place, in these conditions, it was difficult to remember the next lesson she had learned many years ago. This was a belief that everything happened for a reason. The reason wasn't always clear until later, though. She'd learned this by living through circumstances that made others curse the Creator or deny the presence of one. Over the years, experience had displayed time after time that her disappointments and frustrations had powerful lessons on the other side of them. If nothing else, that pain that she had walked through made her see the suffering of others with more compassion, as she had suffered the same mistakes of believing that she knew what was best for her, despite the inability to acquire or accomplish these things or these relationships. During her teens and 20s, she'd given her heart and soul over to men who had no idea the value of her gift. She'd cried on her friend's shoulder many times over her broken heart. Her friend, who had never lost her peace and serenity, assured her that God was protecting her by having the wrong people reject her. She asked her friend why she never seemed to be lonely. Her friend's answer shocked her because she took it literally. Her friend said, I'm never lonely because God is my father, friend, and partner. MJ shook her head in confusion. What do you mean, partner? Jojo answered simply, my comforter. It took MJ many years to understand the truth of Jojo's famous answer to all her complaints about God ignoring her. God doesn't always give you what you want, but He gives you what you need. And then there was a famous slogan she learned in AA, be careful what you pray for, you may get it. That threw her for a loop a few times until she learned to pray the serenity prayer in earnest, asking for serenity, acceptance, and wisdom to know what it was she had the power over. The serenity prayer had seen her through a million trials and temptations. First, it enabled her to abstain from alcohol, eventually tobacco, and ever it had kept her ever since it had kept her from committing everything from homicide to suicide. The one size fits all tool for dealing with everything life or people could dish out. Today she found a huge need for its grace. She had been arrested for nothing, torn from her home and wife, and put into a prison cell in another country. How could this be happening in a country that promoted the freedom of democracy with such pride? What free world would do this to a person whose only criminal acts consisted of possessing a quarter of an ounce of pot or occasionally jaywalking? This whole situation was supremely unfair, and now to be refused the one small comfort of at least seeing her bride was the limit. She should have known that they'd flag her because of association. MJ drummed her fingers on the small table and shook her head in frustration, then raised her open hands and appealed above. What the fuck are you thinking, God? This is bizarre and beyond belief. She removed her eyeglasses and placed them on the table and laid on the bunk, rubbing her eyes until she finally dozed off. Chapter 25. At the very least, your days of eating Pacific Ocean fish are over. With updates. Opinion by Gary Stamper. Reuters. Crisis deepening at Uniscopian nuclear plant upgraded to a level 3 serious incident. Represents a 100-fold increase in severity of radiological release. TEPCO says highly radioactive leakages continue, but unknown where from. It's more than obvious that TEPCO officials have no idea what they're doing, and the big question is why aren't world governments jumping in to contain what's going on? Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean may be dying. Dying. Zona studied the label on the mackerel can. This was the canned fish her grandmother cooked for supper when she was young. No, it couldn't be. This stuff was caught in Thailand, or at least packaged there. And yet she wondered wistfully, will this be the last mackerel I ever eat? The Pacific feeds how many? The rain is spreading the new Black Death across the globe. We all drink from the same cup. And how many will die who depend on the water for survival? Have they forgotten it's a food chain? Every link counts, it's all connected. Humanity staggering under the weight of death, disease, and despair. The other day, she was shopping for grapefruit, and her favorite fruit were ruined when she noticed they come from South Africa. The carbon footprint of 5 minutes of delight. Then, even worse, it was undoubtedly sprayed with the same nasty chemicals known to cause health problems. The meat, she discovered, was produced under inhumane conditions. She couldn't shake that footage of the giant sow held down by a metal bar while the multitude sucked her. Zona saw the Mother Earth as a great sow, and humanity holding her down while they raped and pillaged her. It turned her stomach to feel the earth's helplessness. She lays bruised and bleeding, ravaged by winds and rain, quaking and storming and overflowing with pain. Can't you hear her calling to you? We all drink from the same cup. If we are to survive, it must be in unity. There's only one lifeboat and we're in it. We must work together to provide the first aid she needs. She studied the piece about the heavy water from the damaged nuclear reactor leaking into the ocean since the uniscopic quake. After she got to thinking about the potential for world economic meltdown, she switched between faith and suicidal thoughts regularly. She could imagine martial law for maybe a couple of weeks or a month at most, but once they discovered there was no money to pay them or place they could spend it, they all became hired thugs for the gang with the most weapons and least conscience. She'd read enough stories about countries during Civil War to know that the law could kick your door in any time of day or night, take you, kill you, or both, and your loved ones would never hear from you or be able to know where at least your body was. No safe water, cholera, dysentery everywhere, no hospitals, nursing homes. The only system of justice was dictated by the best armed gang. If this was her future, she was definitely going to check out on by her own device. That was why she was cruising the suicide planning sites. She wanted to keep the good old fashioned faith, but despite her best efforts to escape the mainstream news, it was waved in her face like a red flag by the internet. Facebook users were constantly feeding news articles on current events and tense situations into their status updates. Whenever she thought about how the corporations were being protected by the company whose salaries and taxpayers pay, she would set her jaw and shake her grimace. As a child, she traveled to Minto to get loads of winter fuel. All the Burpee Game Refuge, the creatures there protected refuge, or so she thought. It seems there's a poisonous pond in those woods. There was gray sadness emanating from the earth from Rocky Road on. When she lived there as an adult, she mourned the loss of the actual game refuge that had been ravaged by pulp and paper companies. The thin cosmetic buffer of trees between the naked clear cuts and the road saddened her. The feel of the town itself was tired, empty, and desperate. Could no one else feel the land moaning? please, I need a rest. That's it for today. It's happy and sad. See you tomorrow.